All right, folks, beneficial uses of radiation. This is podcast number 7. You've already watched the 3 Mile Island video where you learned about how the reactor operated and what the causes of that partial meltdown were. Remember, this stuff is on the test. All right, so you need to make sure that you've done that. So if you skip that, saying, oh, I won't do that, better make sure that you go back and do that, okay? Chernobyl heart, same thing. You need to know things like where it is, what happened, the effects on the people and the children, those kinds of things, okay? And obviously the PBS NewsHour thing, which was the follow-on to Chernobyl heart, you need to watch that as well, because again, there are questions on that on the test as well. What are the biological effects of radiation? Well, one of the problems that we have is we have to be able to know if we've been exposed to radiation. So there are 2 types of measuring systems that we use. One is called a dosimeter, and the dosimeter is over here on the right. It's one of these things, and it's just a badge that you wear on your shirt, for example, as you walk around. People who work in a nuclear power plant, for example, would wear those, right? And over here they have something that, if you will, absorbs radiation and is affected by it. It's often simply just a piece of photographic film that is sealed inside this and is not visible to normal light, all right? And as a result, they go and they see how much it was exposed as this person walked around the plant. And so it measures the total amount of radiation that you have received. In this case, it's over a October, November, December time frame. It's a 3-month time period, right? Now, if, for example, you work in a nuclear power plant and if there were an accident in the plant, then you'd be exposed to more radiation. There's a certain limit to how much radiation you can be exposed to in your lifetime, legally in the United States. So if you were, for example, exposed to too much radiation, they would move you either probably to a different plant that was coal-fired, for example, so you would not be anywhere near the radiation source, right? So this simply is, it doesn't tell you right now, oh, I'm being exposed to radiation. It simply keeps a record of how much you were exposed to. Now, this is the opposite of a Geiger counter. Now, a Geiger counter is the most common instrument that we use to measure radiation. You saw it in Chernobyl heart, where they didn't have one that looked like this, but they were talking about how many rems and how many millirems, et cetera, that that people were being exposed to. We do have one in the chemistry lab, and we can show you how it's used, and we can actually show you some things that are, in fact, radioactive that we do have in our lab so that you can actually see that it does react. These radioactive things won't hurt you, but they are nonetheless radioactive, and we can sense that they are radioactive. Okay. Now, a Geiger counter measures currently, right now, how much radiation you're being exposed to. So it doesn't tell you how much you're exposed to over time. It just gives you an instant reading of how much you're being exposed to. Now, how do we use radioisotopes or radioactive isotopes? Well, one of the things we do is that we preserve food with them. So, for example, if you think of strawberries, our strawberries, a lot of them, especially when it is not strawberry season here in Virginia, our food tends to go moldy. All right, so a lot of our strawberries come, for example, from California. So by the time they got here, they'd be covered with mold. So what they do is they run every single strawberry under something that is radioactive. And what it does is it kills all the bacteria on the strawberry. Well, now wait a minute, doesn't that make the strawberry radioactive? Well, no, it does not. It just kills everything that's on it. You're not putting something that is radioactive inside the strawberry. You're actually just killing all the bacteria that's on it. Now, we can go and take radioisotopes and put them in our body. For example, we might take iodine, which we talked about how it is a radioactive tracer, and it goes in and it goes into your thyroid gland. Well, these are some x-rays of thyroid glands after they have radioactive isotopes in them. Right? So they just put it in your bloodstream, and they wait a few hours as it goes and gets stuck in your thyroid gland, and then they can go and trace, look at pictures of your thyroid gland using that radioactive iodine that's in there. They also use barium sulfate going into different parts of your body. Okay. There are many other beneficial uses of radioisotopes. For example, they're used to treat cancer. Cancer cells are more sensitive to radiation because they grow faster. they reproduce faster. So that's one of the reasons that they're more sensitive to radiation. They do have teletherapy. We talked about this with the CyberKnife, where they use a narrow beam of high-intensity gamma radiation to kill cancer cells. But they also use radioactive seeds. And the reason that this picture's up here, let me tell you a little bit of a story. That's my mother-in-law. When she was in her 40s, she had ovarian cancer or uterine cancer. So they took out her uterus, they did surgery, and what they did was they went and put a radioactive seed, specifically radium, they went and implanted that inside her abdomen. So when they took out the uterus, they replaced it with a rock, and they sewed her back up and left her in a room and did not allow anybody to go in there except to deliver food. They ran in, they ran out. And they left her in there for 3 days. 3 days later, they came back in, and they took her into the operating room, and they took the rock out and sewed her back up and sent her home. Right? Well, she was in her 40s then. Right? That sounds very barbaric, but that was what they did was they put something inside of her that was emitting radiation, and it was killing any leftover cancer cells that were in there. Now, she did get leukemia as she got older. She did get uterine cancer. Right? But that wasn't what killed her. She lived to a ripe old age of 93. This was taken on her 90th birthday. So she lived to a ripe old age of 93. So she lived 50 years after she had the cancer. And this was a wonderful, wonderful thing. But bottom line is, we were able to use something that was radioactive, and they put it inside of her to go and kill all the surrounding cancer cells. So that's kind of interesting, different way that works. Obviously, one of the beneficial uses to nuclear knowledge is nuclear energy, which is used worldwide. Right? If we look at the United States, we have 103 plants in the United States. We talked about the fact that there were 2 in the United States, 2 in Virginia, rather. I'm sorry, in Surrey and at Lake Anna. But as you can see, there are many of them nationwide. Now, we don't have any place to put the spent fuel, so right now, almost all of it is sitting at the regular plants, wherever the fuel rods were used. They have these vats of water that they put the fuel rods in. These are actually glowing blue because they're still hot and they're still emitting radiation, but nowhere near as much as they were when they were in the reactors, and not enough to go and generate enough power for us to go and use in a reactor. Now, they do have nuclear waste shipment routes. Again, the plan was to take them out to Yucca Mountain in Nevada, which is out here. And you'll see these are all rail lines of where they were going to go. And you'll notice this one right here, which happens to go right through Roanoke. All right. So they had highway routes, which are in blue, and they had rail routes, which are in red, where they were moving all of this stuff, planning to move it all out to Nevada. And they still use these routes for shipping waste from one place to another. And as you think of trains, what are we in Roanoke? Well, we are a train hub. And notice that we have houses that are all up near the trains, right? Obviously, we have businesses that are near the trains. We have roads that are near the trains, etc. So here in Roanoke, we have big businesses and hotels and such that are all right next to our train tracks downtown. So this is kind of, do you really want all of this nuclear waste going right past you when you're working? That's a question. All right. So bottom line is nuclear power can be a wonderful thing. It goes and saves us bunches and bunches of coal, goes and saves us bunches and bunches of pollution, but there are cons to that as well. So we have pros and cons to nuclear power. Folks, this is your challenge. All right. I'm too old for this. All right. But for you, is nuclear power something that we're going to use? And if it is, it's your challenge to figure out how we use it safely. Okay, that's it, folks. You are done. Believe it or not, you are done with chemistry for the year. Congratulations. Great job. If you have questions on this podcast, see us in class. But you are done.